Welcome to my film review of Ma. Now this was a trippy, weird movie. From what I remember of the trailer, which I saw in the cinema, I do remember thinking, oh, that looks good. Kind of twisted, Misery type movie, if you know what I mean. Misery, the Stephen King Misery, you know, a little bit like, just situational creepiness, freakiness going on. And that's what it ultimately led to be. But the trailer seemed to take forever to get going. The movie seemed to take forever to get going. From where the trailer was, from what the trailer made this movie look like, I thought it was never going to turn into that film. So let's cut to the chase. This is going to be a short review. This was a disappointing, bit of a crap movie, but kind of the weird trippiness at the end just about kind of made it worthwhile. But basically, it took forever to get going. It was like, I looked at the clock. I clock watch on these horror movies. I thought it was a horror. It wasn't really a horror. It was just like some twisted weirdness, really. To call it a horror would be generous. It was just weird, trippy, like Misery, the movie Misery. That's probably as close as you could get to describing what it was like. Kind of creepy situation, a woman who, you know, is a bit creepy. Oh, what's she doing? What are her intentions? It was a little bit like that. So let's cut to the chase. This movie took forever to get going. It was like clock watching. It was 30 to 35 minutes before you got your first, okay, now we're starting to gather some pace with the weirdness. From the very beginning, you can tell something's off. It's one of those movies where, you know, the main character is like, oh, there's something not right about her, you know, Ma. You can tell straight away, oh, what is it? There's something not quite right about her. You know, she's acting strange. And ultimately, we finally really get going at about 55 minutes. So we're nearly an hour into the film before this really picks it up a notch. But half an hour, we finally start to get a little bit weird. About an hour, we really start to crank it up. And it's probably the last half hour where it really does get to like, yes, nice. This is what I remember from the trailer. This is what made me want to come and watch this movie. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so the first hour was okay. I mean, I wasn't bored because, you know, it was to do with situations that I can kind of relate to. Teenagers trying to kill time and have some fun. I can relate to that. It wasn't that long ago where that was me. So, you know, I didn't hate the first hour. But at the end of the day, when you go and watch a movie like this, you're watching it because you want to be freaked out, you want to be creeped out. I'm not there just to watch a bunch of teens having fun. And the creepy freakiness didn't really get going until the last half hour properly. There was a little bit of storyline, which was kind of interesting as it developed. It's to do with, you know, the effects of, you could argue, the mental health effect of things that happen to you in school, and how does that play out in your life. And it kind of makes you think, oh God, think about how cruel school is, and the things, you know, you see happen to people. And at the time you might laugh, and then you think, God, but as you get older, you wouldn't laugh at that. You'd probably go and pick them up, put an arm around them and say, God, that's so cruel. So it kind of gets you thinking about that a little bit. But ultimately, I went to watch this movie because I love horrors. I thought it was going to be a creepy horror thriller kind of movie, and it was okay, but it was a little bit disappointing. So the movie house was actually packed. There was an absolute ton of people in the cinema screen, and as it got to the freaky at the end, the stuff that we all wanted to see, the response from the audience was more giggling than horror and shock. You know, it was like, that's so weird, but it wasn't kind of like as creepy weird as what you'd have liked it to have been. Like Misery, you're like, oh, you know, like freaked out, like, oh my God. And there was a tiny, tiny little bit of that in there, but it was a little bit too slapstick comedy styly. That was kind of what it was like. It was like Misery meets slapstick comedy to a degree. So on the whole, it was a bit of a disappointment. Well, quite a lot of a disappointment. There's a part of me thinks I could give this movie like a 2 out of 10, but that's ridiculous. I think I think it's going to be in line with my disappointment about Rocketman. I gave that a 6.5. I'm probably going to give this about the same. Probably a 6.5, I think, is probably about right. You know, it was trying to be a freaky, suspensey movie, and at the end, you know, you could tell it was building up to that. You could tell it was building up to something, but it just wasn't creepy enough. It wasn't freaky enough. And at the end of the day, if you've seen the trailer, you've already ruined the movie, because you knew ultimately that it was leading up to something really extreme. So it wasn't like when the freakies finally happened at the end, it was a big shock, like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming, oh my God. It was like, you kind of knew that this was supposed to be happening, and you were just the whole movie just waiting for it to happen. It's like, come on, get to the freaky bit. I want the film to be a long, freaky film. I tell you, the movie Split, right? The movie Split is freaky kind of from the start, and then the whole movie plays out with the situation that you get at the end. So the last 30 minutes is just the last 30 minutes. It doesn't last long enough. Whereas in the movie Split, it kind of lasts for the whole movie, and you've got to see the freakiness unfold. Whereas this, like I say, the freaky just wasn't enough. It was just like the last 30 minutes. So I wasn't bored to tears or anything, but I was ultimately thinking, yes, finally, this is going to be mint once it really gets going. And it was okay, but it was a little bit too slapsticky, a little bit, not quite, yeah, a little bit too slapstick, I'm afraid, at the end of the day. Kind of made you more chuckle than be freaked out and disturbed. So it wasn't quite disturbing enough. I think the Saw movies have ruined us. You know, we've seen the Saw movies, freak you out like crazy. Anything now after Saw is just like, oh, is that it? Oh, yeah, I could let my kids watch that. But no, so let's talk about, is this worth going to see? I mean, no, it's not. If, like me, you've got the Cineworld pass and you can go as many movies as you want, if you can fit it in, go and see it. It's worth a watch, kind of, maybe, but probably not. But, you know, I don't regret seeing it, but there's so much good stuff out at the moment. I would go and make sure that you've seen the other stuff, you know. John, go and see Avengers Endgame again rather than go and see this. That would be my advice. This is definitely a movie that you can just catch at home eventually. When it finally comes out on DVD, just catch it then, you know. No need to go and pay to cinema to see this. And even if you don't pay, like me, you can go essentially for free. I'm not sure it's entirely worth your time. I'd probably go and watch, you know, X-Men a second time or something like that, or just make sure that you've seen all of the other blockbuster movies rather than seeing this. I think I'm being generous giving it a 6.5. But yeah, I'm probably going to stay with 6.5. But that does feel like I'm being a little bit generous. I didn't hate the film. It just didn't deliver on what I was hoping for. And when the storyline was okay, as the storyline developed, I didn't mind that. It was kind of feeding you little bits and pieces of the storyline and developing it more and more as you went. So that kind of kept you like interested. So it wasn't the worst movie, but it was definitely a disappointment compared to what I was expecting. So don't waste your money to go and see this one at the cinema, I'm afraid. Catch it when you can see it for free. Can't really say much more than that, other than, yeah, if you've seen it, check in with me. I'd love to hear what you thought about the movie. I haven't heard any movie reviews yet. I'm going to watch the trailer again and see whether the trailer made this out to be all about the last half hour. It probably did, from what I remember of the trailer. So yeah, if you did you find it disappointing as well? I think you probably did. I wouldn't be surprised if the critics really really slaughter this, to be honest. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting. So I'm going to leave it at that. This was a disappointment. Don't waste your money. 6.5 out of 10. Whereas Rocketman was a 6.5 out of 10 that was still worth seeing. This is a 6.5 out of 10 where I feel like I'm being generous. I'm downgrading. 6 out of 10. It's getting a 6 out of 10. I've just downgraded it. 6.1. 6.2. I'm going to give it a 6.2 out of 10. That's my final answer. So thanks for listening to this film review. I'm sorry it was a disappointment. It's raining. It's miserable. That movie was a little bit miserable. I'm going to go home and watch Misery, a proper freaky suspense trippy movie. Okay, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next review. Goodbye.